is episode number 4 of the CloudFocus Weekly, titled Waving Goodbye, for the first week of August 2010. This episode is brought to you by Arkus, cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me is the co-host, my co-host, Justin Elstein. Justin, how you doing?
A little melancholy.
We'll get to that in a second. Wow, when the clouds go by. Wait, that sounds like a good blog post. So we got a couple things to talk about today. We got fun news. Actually, we've got sort of rumor and hilarity ensuing, and then we have some bad news, which we'll talk about. So we have your blog post on Cloud 2, which we'll talk about, and we also have a new blog post from the guys of Salesforce, called Private Clouds, Flat Earths, and Unicorns. You can just tell that that's trying to be facetious. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Google just came out and announced sort of the end of Google Wave, which for those of you who listen to this podcast and read our blog, that's going to be a massive painful point. So let's get to that last. And of course, at the end, stay tuned. Cloud Focus app pick of the week. So you'll stay tuned for that because it's going to be a good one this week. All right, so let's talk. So lead us off by telling us about your blog post this week, and let's discuss it.
Sure. So I wrote a blog post called From Pull to Push, Cloud 2 Changes Everything. And it was inspired by reading a blog post that was posted on, I think it was like a CNN Tech or CNN Money um, blog. And I think Mark Benioff has obviously spoken about this topic, seeing as they being Salesforce.com, have coined the term Cloud 2, and has spoken about this. And what it's really about is this shift of moving from trying to pull information from the web, and when we're talking about applications that you're using within your company or even with your friends, getting information pushed at you. So it's the difference between the reference that I use, or the that I come up with in our blog post, is buying a Bluetooth headset 5 years ago as opposed to buying a Bluetooth headset today.
So for those of us who don't know Cloud One,
I should have started
give
there,
us
shouldn't I?
give us a little bit of what Cloud One was and what
Sure.
Cloud Two
So
is.
Cloud One, it was kind of killer internet apps, right? Stuff like eBay and Amazon, where you can all of a sudden,
Google
what's that?
and
And
Google,
Google,
like
sure.
yep.
Apps that worked on the internet that allowed you to interact with data in ways that you couldn't before. E-commerce type of stuff, bringing information to you, all great things. Now, Cloud 2 is really more about interactions with people, interactions with data, much more lively. If to steal from the Salesforce playbook, if Cloud One is about making business software as easy to use as Amazon, then Cloud 2 is about making business software work more like Facebook, and how you have a steady news stream or news feed of things that your friends are doing, whether they actually post it themselves or whether they take some action within Facebook that posts something for them in their news feed. You, by nature of following them, are being fed or pushed information, and it keeps you sort of in the loop and in the know.
Right. And the point that you brought up that I think is really good, and pats for
Thank you.
you.
You don't get those that
It
often.
is the difference between, Cloud One was in your Bluetooth example or any example of wanting to buy something. I was actually searching. Um, I wanted to buy some whatever, some type of food the other day, and I went to the social network to get it. And that, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, you'd go out and ask your grocer. 5 years ago, 10 to 5 years ago, you would go search on the internets using a Google or a Yahoo. And now you don't. Your first stop for sort of finding information is still probably search, but it's probably coupled with, the social networking. And I think that's where Cloud 2, where they see Cloud 2 going. And of course, Salesforce is building that into their Chatter platform, and that, they want Chatter to be as, a leader in the cloud too, and they modeled it off of obviously off of Facebook and Twitter. But it's true, you do our use of the internet services, cloud computing services, has become much more interactive than it was
Well, it's
before.
also
You
it's
know,
also
yeah,
about connecting the clouds. So
yep,
if you are a user, and we love Salesforce.com, if you're a user of Salesforce.com for customer service, for example, and someone is talking about your company on Twitter, you could pull that right into your CRM and actually interact with that person using your business app, your CRM app. And that is a whole different way of thinking about customer service, customer satisfaction, customer relationship. You use the example of when you were at Dreamforce last year, the big
oh
conference.
yeah,
You stayed at the Omni Hotel, and I think you forgot your toothbrush or something like that.
yep.
And you tweeted, "Oh wow! If you forget your toothbrush at the Omni Hotel, no worries. You just go downstairs, and they'll give you a toothbrush." And then Omni tweeted back to you saying thank you for your kind words, yada yada. They were watching for people talking about Omni. And when I use my example in the blog post of you know if you were to buy a Bluetooth headset today, you might go to the Twitterverse and write, "Hey, does anyone have a really good Bluetooth headset that works well with iPhone 4?" Um, if there are some manufacturers of Bluetooth headsets that make a great headset for the iPhone 4, if they're smart, they are utilizing Cloud 2 to be monitoring that conversation and join it and market directly to you by saying, "Hey, we make a Bluetooth headset. This is the one you want," as opposed
Yep.
to trusting somebody searching through links and trying to find that information that they may have published in some silo on their website.
And it's changed the scope too. I mean, I just finished actually a book called Twitterville, which really talks a lot about this, and it's basically focused very much on Twitter, and the Twitter fear, and
Go
and they
figure.
talk about
Twitterville's focused on Twitter.
it would be hard to figure that. But while I thought the book was pretty good, it was a lot of just stories of using Twitter. They did bring out a couple, but some of the things that I kind of took away from it, because a lot of the stories I'd already heard, people getting out of jail because of Twitter, people raising money for foundations from Twitter, people spreading news through Twitter. Um, but I thought it was sort of interesting is how are companies interacting with their clients and with future clients, um, using Twitter, and how the rules aren't quite the same. It's not a medium of where just putting up a billboard and having people look at it. It's a two-way conversation, and I think if I could boil down the whole Twitterville down to a couple sentences, is about taking it to a two-way conversation, taking all of our communication to two-way as opposed to one-way advertising. And Cloud 2, I think that's exactly what they're trying to get at, is that it goes from just entering data into systems to data that is conversational. And so, I mean, I think it's a great blog post. And if you haven't read it, then you should go to blog.arkusinc.com to read it. Then we have another one, second one on our agenda tonight. It's another blog post called Private Clouds, Flat Earths, and Unicorns, clearly making fun of the putting just opposing two things that don't exist with another thing that people are talking about existing. And we've kind of started talking about this, so let's let's frame the debate, and then we can chime in. um, so there's lots of different terminologies sprouting up about cloud computing. And one of them is called, there's the public cloud, there's cloud computing, and there's the public cloud, and which is sort of what we talk about most of the time. And then there's a new concept, that a lot of people have been bringing up and saying, well, there's a new thing called a private cloud. The public cloud being something that is, externally hosted. It is run by generally a different company than your own, and you're using it because they're using virtualization. It's a easy model. You don't have to invest a lot of money. You don't have to invest in hardware or software. You're just using licenses that's scalable up or down in a shared environment, multi-tenancy. Uh, Private clouds now, the theory being, if you so agree to the theory, is that you could take all the technology that's used in the cloud, right? So virtualization and multi-tenancy, even if you're going to do it in a big enough environment, and you bring it internal. So it's the idea of taking that, all the or some of the economies of scale of using cloud computing and bring it internal. So this blog post is basically poking fun at that, and it's written by Peter Coffey, and it's basically saying, it doesn't exist. It's just giving another word to something that doesn't, that doesn't make sense, and it's making people who want to still build their data centers, giving them giving them a feeling of why they would. It's like, oh, I'm using a private cloud, and I can then go sell that to the CTO or the CIO or the CEO, and they'll say, yeah, that's great. I've heard of this cloud computing thing. Go build that private cloud. Okay, go build that data center. So, what are your thoughts on the
Well, I'll
article?
start off by saying Peter Coffey's a phenomenal blogger and an evangelist of cloud computing. If you've ever seen a Salesforce conference live streaming, he's generally the guy that hosts them. He writes a lot of these blog posts on this cloud blog that supposedly has people like Parker Harris and Mark Benioff writing posts, but that very rarely happens. It's most often Peter Coffey. So kudos to him for writing a interesting blog and touching on some very interesting topics, obviously with a slant towards the public cloud. And in this case, he poses the question of, you can't always go with, looking at survey results, because in a world where you can choose things that don't actually exist, if given the option, you're going to choose things that don't actually exist, like a flat Earth where there are no time zones and no no issues with certain things that the Earth is round, and you do have to work with people that are 12 hours off from you and things of that nature if you're working in sort of a global economy and you don't have to think about those things. And I think he draws these very interesting, intricate lines between that corollary and well, if you're building your own data center, you have to think about that type of thing. These are imperfect uh, sort of boundaries that you're given to have to build something within. Why not let the professionals who are paid big bucks to build out these global data centers do that for you? At the end of the day, if you're going to choose a private cloud, it sounds great. It sounds like I have amazing security that I can build my own standards to. But really, if you are doing that, you're only using your own security standards. You're not sort of getting the economies of scale of saying, wow, hundreds of the biggest companies in the world all have their own security standards and they're all on this one service. So this one service has to meet all of those security standards. They're going to meet mine, right? All of these different, HIPAA and Sarbanes-Oxley and all these different compliance things that public clouds have to meet in order for certain companies to use them, you have to build your stuff to those specs and maintain them and have talented staff that are high paid, generally high paid resources that you can sort of just pay in case something goes wrong. Uh,
Right.
you know,
And I
and that's where you lose when you talk about the private cloud is you're paying people to sit around and not be utilized. They're basically utilized at about 10%.
and I think I would take that straight up into not just people and using people, but using um, the actual one of the things that makes the ROI good on public clouds is that you're getting, right, when you sign up for your however many licenses of Gmail or of of Salesforce or of any other cloud computing service, It's up to them to figure out what servers or what pod you go into or what data center that you're using, what their utilization is, and they might move you into this one based on how many licenses, but that's all on them. If you go build your own data center, and I have done this in my past, not huge data centers, but I've racked and stacked servers and I've, run server rooms and then it's up to you and all that economy of scale of saying let someone else worry about if the servers are at 25% capacity or 50% capacity, or what the disaster recovery program is, or what the offsite backup, or what the or what the upgrade schemes are. All that stuff is very detailed and difficult to do, and even the best in the world don't get it very well. Don't always get it right. In the case of Salesforce has even had cases where they've had failures, and they have some of the best and brightest working on this stuff. So to kind of have the chutzpah to say, well, my guys are better, and we're going to go invest these millions of dollars worth of hardware, and we're going to use it for our own people. But we know we won't be able to utilize, get the utilization of those servers and software up for 6 months, a year, 2 years. I mean, we both worked at a company that if given a project to, if given $300 million to go set up a
They'll
new
spend it.
data center, they wouldn't be. I mean, 3 years later, they'd be up to about, maybe using 10% of it. Well, you've lost all that money because you've put in $300 million, and 10 years and 3 years later, you're using 10%, as opposed to using it for you know, uh, buying licenses and starting to use as much as you want. I want to use 10 licenses. I want to use 100. I want to use 1,000 tomorrow. So a good article, interesting. I think the whole cloud blog thing is kind of interesting that it's on Salesforce's domain, and it looks like these guys are you're right that Mark and Parker are doing their blogging. Um, Unlike Arkus, where we actually blog right from, the top officials of Arkus will blog. So that brings us, speaking of blogging, as I look at our Google
So
Wave that
sad.
handles
This
our
is a
our
sad
blog
day.
post. Well, it's first of all, it's not the end. It's
Let's
only the
hope
beginning
not.
of it's the beginning of the end, or maybe it's
The
the beginning
beginning
from
of
the
the
end.
end of the end of the beginning.
So the little side story here to get us to where we are is that we've actually been talking about Google Wave for since we started this podcast and since we started blogging. It was like one of our first things because it became a tool. But so we've been big evangelists, and it's been kind of interesting. Well, apparently we're the kiss of death because Google literally announced either yesterday or 2 days ago. I think it was
It was
yesterday.
yesterday.
Um, but it was through an interview, and it was a weird kind of Then they actually put it up on their blog. They announced that they are discontinuing the development of Google Wave, and they're going to move the development team off of that onto something else, and they're going to support it till the end of the year. And at that point, they don't know. There's no like they didn't say, and all your base belong to us. They just said, whatever, something will happen. Um, which I am going to write a blog post about this. So this is the preview to the blog post. But here's my problem with it. And actually, I think a very bad this is a bad day in cloud computing, because this is exactly what the people on the other side who don't believe in the cloud computing and want to use their own infrastructure and their own IT, this is exactly what they will point to say, yeah, see, there you go, that's why you don't use Google, right? That's why you don't use these other companies, because you don't control it, because you went and you put time and effort into using a tool that you got, and we're using it. We actually pay for Google, or using Google's service, the pay version. So we're paying for this service, right? And yet they get to decide to take it away from us, and that is a problem with cloud computing, in that you don't
Well,
control it.
there's one
So
thing though. This
well, hold on. But wait. But let's back up. So that, I think, is going to be used. That's going to be used as a you know it's used as the story for IT groups who don't want to move to things like Google and Gmail and Google Apps, and they're going to point to this and say, "You see, what happens if they put a feature into Google, Google Spreadsheet or Google Sheets, or if they put a feature into something and then they don't like it and they pull it out, and you rely upon that for part of your business process." It's exactly what they point to, and I think this is a short-sighted, bad move on top of Google. Yeah, I understand they don't want to continue it, but it is going to have a ramification later, and a bigger one. and I think it put a black spot right now on cloud computing and why people would choose not to use Google for anything else. Um,
allow me to retort.
sure,
Thank you. Google Wave is a labs project. It it's not even a beta project. It's a labs project, right? There's no SLA on Google Wave. When you sign up for Google Premiere, there are SLAs in place for certain products that are not labs. When you use a labs product, they disclaim wholeheartedly this thing may blow up, it may go away. So you're using this sort of at your own risk. This may not exist in the future. It is not a full part of our product suite. There's no SLA on this. I mean, that's a big part of cloud computing. When you go to procure a cloud computing product, you want to make sure that there's the appropriate service level agreements in place, that you don't get, kicked in the rear like I'm feeling right now by Google Wave. Because I think I said it on the last podcast, I cannot imagine our company without Google Wave, and and here comes the this blog post of doom around Google Wave going away. With that said, I have the feeling that Google Wave is not going to go away. I have the feeling that this is a phenomenal product. Google is good at building products and really bad at rolling them out. They they
agreed.
build some really cool stuff, but they don't know how to make it so that people use it. They sort of throw stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. But they should be more mature than that at this point.
Well, it's literally their model. I mean, they literally allow, and I don't have, do I have anybody who I know works at Google? I don't think so. But their
I know they're
model
allowed
is
to
that,
take 20% of their time and sort of build whatever they want.
well, yeah, that's more to, yeah, throw it to whatever you want. But they really do, and that's what the whole labs thing's about. The one thing I'll kind of throw back on this is while this was a labs product, this was also thrown out there on a big stage, and they made huge announcements on it, and then they made a huge announcements when it was 1 year old. And unlike other labs products, right? Most labs products you can't install as part of your Google Apps thing, right?
Right.
You can't. If you go into Google Apps and you try to turn on other labs products for your org, or for your instance, your Google app instance, you can't do it, right? This one they actually made available and turned on and made it permissionable so you could roll it out to people. So I get, and you know what? I think it's a little bit of a cop out to say, oh, it's a labs thing. Well, if it's labs, then keep it in your lab, right? That's the whole concept of a lab. A lab is a place that you do work that no one else sees. When you're ready to have other people see it, you take it out of the lab and then you let other people deal with it. I get. Lab? But then again, they moved this into the product suite and they moved it into the Google app as something to turn on. And I think at that point, they yes, there's no SLA for it, but at that point, you're basically saying this is part of the suite. And yeah, it's a labs product, but I think it's a mistake. And again, it's not the death of Google at all. Here's the good news. SaveGoogleWave.com is started up, I think today. They already have like, 2,000 votes
I
or
started
whatever.
following them
Um,
on Twitter.
yes, you follow them on Twitter, and you know what? Companies change. They change their mind. What I'm hoping is that Google Wave, morphs into something else. I mean, they've already used some of the technology. The real time collaboration is already built now into, I think, Sheets and into Docs. So they're already moving some of that. Um, I know there's pieces of that are open source, so maybe someone will also run with it. But again, even like to look at something like Salesforce built Google Wave adapters, right? They built ways to connect up Google Wave. They have a whole demo, Google Wave and Salesforce together. I mean, how does this, if I were the head of Salesforce, if I were Mark or Parker, and I put some sort of effort into to kind of showing the collaboration, and then the other guy goes, "Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore." I think that it doesn't suit well for anybody. And again, I think it's, and you've said this from your past experience working with IT, smaller IT shops, that they'll say the reason we don't want to go to something like Google is because they don't show they don't show very good sense of how businesses work and how to roll things out. They'll roll them out without kind of letting you know that they're coming. So anyway, that's that's the good way. We will fight it
We will
right
fight it.
here on Cloud Focus. By episode 25, we will be doing it. We will still be in the wave.
Join us in the fight.
Um, join us in the fight. All right, let's go for our Cloud Focus app pick of the week. And as always, I'll let you start it
I'm
off
always going
because,
first.
well, because I just ended up talking, so then you talk.
All right. This week I am choosing a an email marketing solution. This email marketing solution is called Exact Target. I'm choosing this one because I like the way that it integrates with Salesforce.com. So you can use Salesforce.com as sort of your source of data, your source of lists, your source of contacts, and use Exact Target to actually send out templated emails to those contacts, and then see the results of opens, bounces, conversion type of stuff from within the Salesforce interface. You can even send an email from within the Salesforce interface. It has great ability to send an email to a report, which is an interesting concept. You just run a report in Salesforce and point Exact Target at it and say, go, send to that report. It's pretty awesome. They have
Hmm.
some interesting Twitter integrations where they've started working with some of the social networks in Twitter, and they have a pretty intuitive, easy to use template builder, and it's sort of a top down thing. So you can have a top level marketing admin type user that can build the templates, and then they have sort of a lock and publish model where the end user has a different permission set, and they can take the template and modify the text in certain areas or the images in certain areas, but not other areas, and that's all they can really do. And it allows for some pretty granular controls. And like I said, if you're a Salesforce user, it can use Salesforce as the source of the data, the email addresses and the names and the merge fields. So you can merge in all sorts of interesting data like hello, name, yada yada yada. You have this type of account, etc., and then see the results from right within Salesforce. Never have to leave. It's actually on the App Exchange,
Nice.
and
What's the pricing?
the pricing is kind of steep. It's a little expensive.
Is
Um,
it more than a is it more than
More
adjusted?
than adjusted. It's actually expensive. It's as you imagine. It's based on email sends.
Right.
So you say I'm gonna send 200,000 emails this month, and they quote you a price. For a yearly contract. I don't want to throw the price out there. It's not one of those 4.99 or freemium $15 type of things because it's definitely variable on obviously the amount of services that it'll take to get it installed and working with your app, and also
Give me a sense of the size. Is it
um,
so? I mean, is this isn't for small
this is not
companies?
for
This is
small
for
companies. This is for real
okay.
deal marketing companies. It could be 20, 30 grand a year, something like that for
Okay.
somewhere around 200,000 emails per
Gotcha.
month, depending on who you are as a company and your negotiation skills.
Cool. All right. Exact Target email marketing by Exact Target, right? That's the name of the
Yep, it's
company.
Exact
Exact Target
Target. You can Google
by
it.
Exact Target. I think that's been every one of your picks has been blah by blah. The same person. All right, I like it. I never used it. We've actually done stuff about with other ones like vertical response and
This
constant
is a
contact.
higher end tool than that.
Right. And I think that's generally what we would say to clients is, okay, where are you in the spectrum? Are you going to send 5,000 or 2,000 emails a month? Okay, use
It's
Salesforce,
also
use
about
whatever
the
you have, or maybe use,
reporting
and
and the
then
analytics and the
right.
controls that you want over certain types of different users.
Yeah, absolutely. So good product. I'm actually gonna pick something that is a little strange because it is an application that you download and install. And it's one that I'm going to give a big shout out to Simon Fell. Um, but it is basically the name of the product is called Mail Drop, and it is for the Mac OS, well, Mac OS 10. It is for Entourage or Mail, and what it does, very smartly, is if you want to send an email, if you want to have an email from in your inbox, and you want to have it attached to a contact or a lead or an opportunity or a contact or um, an account in Salesforce, you can just click on this and say add. It's basically a little app, and it sits next to you on your desktop, and you click add email or add case, and it basically throws it up. Logs into Salesforce for you. You type that in once, and then it throws it in there, and it can match it up, and it does a little search and gives you a little screen. This is great functionality because on the Windows side for Outlook, you have something. They have Salesforce. Uh, they have a plugin for Outlook which does this functionality. On the Mac side, you kind of don't have this functionality. I will say it's become. I used to use it a ton. Again, MailDrop X, made by Simon Fell. It's at pocketsoap.com, but just it used to be very, very, very popular, and I used to use it a ton. I would say use it much less now because of email to Salesforce, that you can just email BCC an address, and that seems to work. I know we all use it because we're big Mac guys here. And it's a good one. It's up to version 2.2. It is free, so it's not $30,000 a year. It's free. The only limiter, I think, is that you need to have, I think, a certain. No, that might not even be the case. Check with what edition it works with because it does use the API. I think they left it open for this product. He has actually a bunch we might talk about in future podcasts, but it's email integration for Salesforce.com from OS 10, either Entourage or Mail.app. It is MailDrop by Simon Fell at PocketSoap.com. And that is the end of the podcast. Wow, quick. We were told to keep it quick, so we're going to keep it quick, people. We want you listening. If you want to find out more, if you want to follow us, find out what we're doing. Many different ways. Probably the first way is start at the blog.arkusinc.com. That's ARKUSINC.com. We'll have blog posts. We'll actually post episodes of this podcast. So you want to get to old podcasts. Also go to iTunes and subscribe to it in iTunes. Just go to iTunes and type in on the iTunes store and type in CloudFocus, one word. It'll show up. It's basically the only thing named CloudFocus. You can subscribe to it. Great way of doing that. If you want to follow us, you can follow Justin at twitter.com/JustEdelstein. And if you want to follow me, Jason, you can go to twitter.com/JasonMAtwood. We're also on LinkedIn, and our company, Arkus, is on Facebook. So you can go to facebook.com/Arkus Inc., and you'll show up. All good places to follow what we're doing and blog posts and interesting tidbits that we might have. So thank you for joining us. Justin, you have any last comment that you'd like to throw out there for the cloud people?
No, I don't actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
glad to put you on
you
the
always
spot
do that
then.
to me, and kind of catch me off guard there. Thanks though,
All right. Well,
appreciate it.
you were just looking so you know, morose about Google
I
Wave.
am pretty upset.
So thank you for joining us on Cloud Focus. Remember to subscribe to iTunes, and until next week, we will talk to you later.